Welcome back. The video is not about this trilogy, but I don't actually have a physical copy of the game to which I want to talk about today. But since this is from the same series of games, I thought let's just show this one out, because that way you'll know at least have some sort of visual representation of what I'm talking about. Today, I'd like to talk about the fourth installment in this collection, the Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. This was released, I believe, in 2013 on the PlayStation 3 exclusively. This game had a physical and digital release. I picked up the digital release because, excuse me, my hands are wiping this to get the dust off. As you can see, I got the digital release, probably because the physical release of that game is pretty high, and I thought, compared to the digital release, which is, I believe it is currently $9.99. I could be wrong there, and if I am wrong, then I'm wrong. But I believe I paid no more than $15. I paid less than $15, probably $9.99 or $12.99, somewhere around there. Either way, 15 is like half, if not more than half, off from what you would pay for a physical copy used of Thieves in Time. It is getting pretty up there. A lot of other classic PlayStation platformers are going up there in price. Let's see what else I've got over here that might show you an example of what's going up there in price. Here we go. This is Ratchet & Clank Crack in Time. This I picked up for $8.99, obviously, but it's now probably about 20-something. You might be able to get that pretty cheap, though. What else? I've got another Ratchet & Clank game up here that I don't feel like moving things around to get to, but I believe it's Into the Nexus, the physical PlayStation 3 release used Into the Nexus. That one's pretty high now. I believe it's in the 80-plus range, used. And that means used, you won't get the Quest for Booty game, because that's a voucher code that you had to put in. It wasn't included on the disc or anything like that. So when you bought a copy of Into the Nexus of Ratchet & Clank, you had to buy it new in order to get Quest for Booty, which is the second installment in the Ratchet & Clank series. I believe I've mentioned this sometime before talking about the Ratchet collection. So, it's just an example to tell you that these platformers are going up. This is no longer 20-something that I picked it up for. It's probably about 40-something now. They're going up. So if you're a platformer collector, like I am, at least like 3D platformer, not 2D, like Gags, Rayman, and all that stuff. No, a 3D platformer like Sly, Ratchet & Clank, Spyro. If you're a collector of that stuff, hop on the PS3 ones now before it's too late, because they're going to go up and up and up and up and up. Now let's talk about Thieves in Time now, finally. Thieves in Time, 2013 release. Quite a bit of time after Sly 3, you'd think it was released in like the year after Sly 3. Because if I'm going to talk about the gameplay of Sly 3, I have to talk about the graphics and gameplay and all that other stuff. It's basically almost exactly like Sly 3 in terms of gameplay mechanics, in terms of design, in terms of how everything looks. It's basically Sly 3, and I think this game got panned by a lot of people because of these types of reasons. But I'm going to blow you for a loop. I think Sly 4 is superior to all three of these. I do. I think it's superior to all three of these. At least in terms of gameplay and all that stuff. So, we have three primary playable characters. We have Sly, Bentley, and Murray. Obviously, you've had those three since Sly 2. We've started with Sly. His moveset has evolved since the first game into what he had in the second game. And what he had in the second game didn't really change all that much in the third game. It changed only slightly in the fourth game, through the use of his outfits and things of that nature. But his main outfit here the moveset, all that is pretty much exactly the same that you've gotten since Sly 2 and 3. They didn't change that all that much. Don't fix what ain't broken, right? Bentley, his moveset's changed a little bit, just a little bit, in the 4th installment. I believe in 3 he had the wheelchair triple, quadruple jump. You just keep pressing the jump button, and he could just keep using the jetpack to jump higher and higher and higher. Well, they got rid of that. Now you could do the double jump still, and the double jump is this jetpack, and you could hold onto the jetpack and have him hover slightly to get across large gaps. But that's about it. He doesn't get to do 1, 2, 3 triple, quadruple jumps with the jetpacks using all the jets and whatnots. He has the same type of pickpocketing that he had in the 3rd installment. I don't remember if he was able to pickpocket a bomb onto the enemies in 3. But he definitely can in 4, and is really good. Once you max out, purchase all of his skills to implant a bomb onto the enemy's pocket. After you pickpocket their gold and all that stuff, you can put a bomb into their pocket, and then you get a safe distance away, and you can press a remote detonation. You can remote detonate now, which is amazing. I think that was in 3. I do not remember for sure. But it's definitely in 4. You have to purchase it. It's an upgrade. You have to collect all sorts of treasures and buy all the upgrades and stuff as you continue the story, but you'll eventually pick up a remote detonation, which means bombs will never detonate by themselves anymore. They will detonate when you press, I believe it's the R1 button. You can put up to 5 bombs out at a time now, which is amazing. I love that. Because the big enemies, they never die to 1 bomb unless you upgrade the bomb. And you can upgrade that through skills and purchases and all that stuff, but usually those big enemies, they don't die with 1 bomb, so you would have to put a couple of them on the floor next to them. You'd put a couple of them, and then they blow up, but they usually spot you after the first bomb, right? So what they did in 4 is you could set down a bunch of bombs, up to 5, all centered around the big boy. And then you could detonate all of them at once. And it's a chain of explosions, and it'll take the big guy down. So, Bentley had a lot of improvements to his moveset here that he did not have in 3. And that's the things that I like. It's just these tiny little improvements to the character movesets. Which means Bentley controls better than he did in 3. Sly controls better than he did in 3. Murray controls better than he did in 3, but Murray loses a move that he had in 3 that he no longer has in 4. At least I don't know how to use it in 4. There was no mission where he used it. But if you remember, in Sly 3, Murray, who the pink guy right there, the hippo, Murray, he was practicing under the guru in Sly 3 when he picked him back up. And he had this ball technique where he could bounce and roll around and all that stuff. They dropped that in Sly 4. They gave him a few other techniques and moves. He didn't really have a lot to do in Sly 4, and I am sad to say that. But he didn't really have a lot to do. Bentley didn't really have a lot to do either. Both of them are set to their gimmicks. Murray is the muscle. Whenever you use him, he punches and beats things down. You expect that. They gave him a mission where he could pick things up, like crates and things like that. And he could throw the crate into a holding area, because he had to pick. In the first chapter, he and Bentley went to go fishing to pick up some fish. And Murray would throw the crate of fish onto carts, do some platformings to get to the cart, pick it up, and throw it to another thing, just so he could jump and all that other stuff and all that good stuff. So he had a few things to do. So there's definitely fewer missions than 3 had. But what I liked about 4 was that they were concise. They cut down on the amount of things. They had a routine that they set up in 2 and 3, and they kept that. But all of the clutter missions, the mini games, and all that other side stuff, they cut that out. And regrettably, this does cut down the amount of content that you could do mission-wise. But they improve your playability by adding other things that you could do. You could collect masks. You could collect treasures. You can collect the clue bottles still, and open the safes. There's a bunch of stuff you could do to get to 100% completion in Sly 4. Then you primarily use Sly to get to a lot of them, and we're going to talk about his costume outfits and stuff in Sly 4 that are really, really good, that I do not believe 3 or 2 had. I know they had disguises in 2 and 3, but they didn't have these little gimmicks that these outfits did in 4. But let's talk about Murray's moveset in 4. He still has the punching, but now he's got some more wrestling-based moves. You can unlock an arm bash, where you jump up into the air and you press square, and he slams his arm down, and it makes a big AoE shockwave, knocks everybody down. It's kind of like his belly flop ability when you jump and press the triangle button, but it's got a wider radius and it does more damage. Also, what you can upgrade is when how do I say this? Anything he picks up, there's an upgrade you can buy in the store, ThiefNet, that makes anything Murray picks up become explodable when he tosses it. This includes the people that he picks up. So you can press the stomp button with circle still, and that you could do ever since Sly 2 and 3. You can press the circle button, the stomp button to pick up an enemy, even the big enemies, and if you press triangle, he will throw them to the ground, and they will explode. Even the big guys die in one hit. It's amazing. And you can still press the circle button while he's holding them in the air to shake out the money. And you can still get the big treasures, the unique treasures and stuff from their pockets still with Murray. You just have. And the good thing about it when you're doing it with Murray is when you collect like the 100 or the 200 or the 500 coin worth treasures when doing pickpocketing, when Murray collects it, the enemy that he's holding disappears, so you don't have to worry about getting rid of them. They were gotten rid of in the cutscene or whatever. So that's pretty cool. He also has a charge attack. Everybody's got charge attacks. Bentley can charge from bombs and all that stuff. But Murray can charge a flurry of punches when you press and hold the triangle button. He can charge a flurry of punches. And you can purchase upgrades in the shop where you can run around while charging his attacks and then just flurry with a few of punches into the faces of his enemies, and he will destroy anything. He's very improved here, just minor. You lose the ball, which gave him super high jumps and all that stuff. He is not somebody you would use if you want to go acrobatic platforming. And the game understands this, the world understands that. Bentley and Murray are not Sly, so they're not going to be as agile as Sly. Murray is not as agile as Bentley. Bentley is slightly more agile than Murray, but he's not as agile as Sly. So Bentley can get to some places that Murray can't, and Sly can get to places that both of them can't. Murray is primarily an on-the-ground type of character. Bentley can jump some slight gaps with his jetpack, but it doesn't last that long, so he can't just infinitely fly places. Sly could still do all of the acrobatics, climbing poles, tightrope walking, and all that stuff that he did in 2 and 3 and 1. All those unlockable attacks that you did in the first game, they're pretty much already unlocked by the 4th game, so you can do whatever you want with him. What he gets new is his costumes. So let's talk about Sly next. Sly has, in each chapter, he will obtain a costume. In Chapter 1, he goes to feudal Japan, Thieves in Time, they time travel, because there's a villain who is sending henchmen back in time to change the past and basically erase the Thievius Raccoonus. They're basically getting rid of Sly's ancestors, and they're removing all of their actions throughout history. The book itself is having all of the pages become blank because they basically just stopped existing. Because of this evil henchman, this guy and his henchmen, who are going back to various points of time, getting rid of the Cooper ancestors. So Sly and the gang come back together. They go back in time to put a stop to that, because it's causing paradoxes, and the villain's name is, spoilers, Le Paradox. He is French. L-E, paradox. You know what a paradox is. So that's basically what Le Paradox is trying to do, cause a paradox and change the future and all that stuff by messing with the past. The first chapter takes you to feudal Japan, where you meet Sly's ancestor, Ryoichi Cooper. Ryuichi is a ninja type of character, and each of the Sly Ancestors are playable, as you saw in some of the marketing trailers and all that other stuff. You saw the Sly Ancestors. For the most part, they are reskins of Sly. They are reskins of Sly, but each one of the Ancestors has things that none of the other Ancestors, nor even Sly, can do. For example, Ryuichi Cooper. His moveset is almost the exact same as Sly's. He can do all the acrobating and stuff that Sly can, but he's got one extra thing. When you are perched onto like tight ropes and all that other stuff, when you're jumping and you press circle or something to grab onto something and you're tightrope walking or something, you could hold down, I believe it's the R2 button, and you could flash jump between various tightrope poles and all that stuff, so you don't have to jump and walk across distances. He just teleports to them. So Ryuichi could do that to get around faster, because he doesn't have the what's the word for it? The paraglide. Sly still has his paraglide, so you could jump around. You press R1 to use the paraglide to hover around long distances. Most of the Sly Cooper Ancestors do not have access to something similar to a paraglide until you get to Chapter 5. We'll talk about Chapter 5 in a moment. So, Ryuichi's method of getting around is to use the flash steps. So he's pretty cool. And there's a bunch of chapters surrounding Ryuichi. And I like that each chapter's story is primarily focused on that time period's Cooper ancestor. Sly is primarily used for collecting stuff in most of these games, in most of these chapters and all that stuff. He's primarily used to collect the clue boxes, he's used to collect the treasures, he's used to collect all that. You could still use the Cooper ancestors to do all the things that Sly does, but Sly could just get around better with the paraglide. But in terms of the uniqueness of Ryuichi, I liked that he could do the flash step. I liked that each Cooper ancestor could do something that Sly could not, just to give you a reason to use them. And their chapters and their missions, rather, that you use the ancestors in usually focus around their unique ability. So whenever you had a Ryuichi mission, you would usually go to a place where you had to use the flash step. So in feudal Japan, Sly's first outfit is a samurai disguise. And it's a callback to 2 and 3, where we get a disguise to fool the people of that area, to making them think that he's one of them when he walks around. But this outfit, this samurai outfit, also comes with a shield. The shield can deflect fireballs, and it's also fireproof. So, for example, if you're in any of the future chapters, into like 2, 3, 4, 5, the final boss, etc., and that you see fireballs coming at you, or somebody's throwing flamethrowers at you, if you turn on the samurai disguise costume, the fire will not ever harm you. You will not get hurt by the fire, and that's a cool gimmick. And the shield will basically deflect the fireballs back at whatever's throwing them at you. And you're going to be using that to collect some treasures throughout the future chapters. So even every disguise, every costume this Sly gets, in the future and retroactively, are used throughout the entire stage to collect the treasures that are on that stage. Because you will have to return to these stages in the future. For example, I'll talk about the future costumes and tell you why you would have to return. In the second chapter, you believe, which one was this? This is the Wild West chapter. I believe it's the 1800s, late 1800s, something around that time period. And the Sly Cooper ancestor here is Tennessee Kid. Tennessee Kid is an outlaw who can use the crack shot. That's his special gimmick. Basically, you can use Tennessee Kid's cane as a gun. You can basically shoot things. You can go into bullet time, shoot up to 5 shots, maybe more than 5 shots. However long your special ability gauge is, how much you've got the special ability, because when you go into crack shot mode, it slowly goes down and down and down. But during that time period, you can go and, what's that word I'm looking for? Target. You could go ahead and target as many targets as you like during that time period as it dwindles down, and at the end, you will immediately fire off a bunch of shots in rapid succession. So that's what Tennessee Kids can do. He's the marksman Cooper ancestor, and you could do all the tightrope walking and acrobatics just like I can do. You could do the pickpocketing, you could do the jumping and all that other stuff too. But the crack shot's really cool. It's really cool. You can only use each ancestor can only be used in their time period. Just to let you know. So when you go back to time travel back to feudal Japan, you'll be able to play as Ryuichi again. When you go to the Wild West, you can play as Tennessee Kid. And the disguise that you can get in Chapter 2, The Wild West, is a prisoner outfit, because Sly gets arrested. He gets a prisoner outfit. He's got a giant ball and chain. And what you could do with the ball and chain, the movement is very restrictive, because it's a giant ball. It's very heavy, so of course you're walking slow. But the gimmick here is that you could throw this giant ball. You can just throw it at things. You could break walls with it. You can attack enemies with it. And it's just really good damage, too. It knocks a lot of stuff out in one hit. And you can use that to go back to Chapter 1. There's some breakable doors. You can throw the ball, break the door down. You can collect the treasure, and go back to your hideout and add it to your collection. Because you need to collect all the treasures to get the Platinum Trophy in this game. So you gotta collect all of them. So you will need to get all the costumes, go back into each time period, and use all of your costumes retroactively to collect the treasures. That's why Sly is usually the one you use to collect everything with. Despite during the story, you would use the Cooper ancestor to do all the story stuff with. I liked that. I liked that they gave it a little bit of a variety gameplay-wise, rather than do all these mini-games and stuff. And each one of the Cooper ancestors are very likable. Ryuichi's likable. Tennessee Kid's likable. And Carmelita shows up. Carmelita shows up by Chapter 2, and she's playable too. And she was technically playable in Chapter 3. During certain missions, you could use Carmelita and have her do her moveset. She could attack with her gun, short range, swinging and swiping, and she could jump, double jump. Then she could fire, basically doing a lot of what Tennessee Kid can do. The difference here is that Carmelita, who gets lost in time by Chapter 2, joins the Cooper gang to go hunt down the Paradox. And you can pick her at the hideout, because she's traveling with you to all these time periods to chase down the Paradox. Which means that in the hideout, you could click to play as Carmelita anywhere you want, in any time period, in any level, in any chapter. She doesn't really have any missions. You don't really need to click to play as Carmelita to go somewhere or whatever. Normally, she does get a few stages where she gets to do something, but she will usually click another character to play as to get to that mission. And during like phase 2 of that mission, you would play as Carmelita to do something, etc. That's usually how it works. So, for example, in Chapter 2, you would click to play as Tennessee Kid as he goes to take down some river dam, and Carmelita goes with her to rescue Sly and the rest. And you would use Carmelita to shoot down the enemies while Tennessee Kid pilots the boat. It's stuff like that. But the thing I like is that even if it's not to do story mode stuff, you can always just click Carmelita from the hideout, go anywhere you want with her, and basically play as her. Which was one of the restrictions that you had in Sly 3. Because one of the restrictions that I didn't really care for in Sly 3 was that, while you could play as the Guru, the Panda King, technically you could play as those two, run around, jump, and all that stuff. They have a full moveset and all that stuff. Penelope didn't. She's usually the person you would use to do the RC cart and stuff. Her missions were usually involved with the RC carts and stuff like that. Who else did you have to pick up during that time period? I forget. Oh, Dimitri. Yeah, his levels were first person and under the water stuff. But the Guru and the Panda King, they had a full move set. They had full stuff that you could do with them, but you could never pick them from the hideout. Carmelita had all the stuff that you could do with her from this, but you could never pick her from the hideout because obviously she was an antagonist. She only sometimes joined up inside to take down a bad guy. By the 4th game, she's basically part of the crew. And she joins them for the adventures. So that's why you could pick her to play as in 4 and whatever you want. And I liked that. I really did. It's just one of these small things that you could use. You don't really need her for any collecting of treasures or things like that. But if you wanted to just have some fun playing as Carmelita, you could click her and go out and play as her. I liked that. I love that about that. And you can always go back in time to play as any of the other ancestors, even after the story's over. You can play as any of the other Cooper ancestors whenever you want. And I loved that about that game. So another thing about Sly's prisoner outfit in Chapter 2 is that he could roll on the giant ball. And the usually when you have a laser grid floor, the ball, you could roll around the ball on top of the laser grid floor, and you wouldn't get hurt by the laser grid. And they use that for some platforming sections. I like how when you collect the treasures in previous chapters, they incorporate these costumes into the platforming. So, for example, you would go to a segment where there's a little dragon statue firing fireballs that you use the samurai to block the fireball. And then you go through that door, and then you see electrical laser grid wire floor on the ground that you have to then switch to your prisoner outfit to roll the ball across the floor, and then you got to knock a door down. I love how they incorporate those into these platforming segments that are not part of the story. You use those to collect treasures to bring back to Sly's hideout for the platinum trophy. So if you go after 100% game completion, you're going to need to use every costume in the game to the fullest, which was something I really liked. In Chapter 3, you go to... Come on. Oh, yeah, Prehistoric Times. Chapter 3 is Prehistoric Times. They accidentally go to this time period, but, luck be have it. There's a villain there that they gotta take down. In Prehistoric Times, they meet the very first Cooper ancestor. He doesn't really have a name. They call him the Caveman Cooper, or as Sly would call him, Bob. Bob. Just Bob Cooper. B-O-B. Bob. I love that. I love it. Bob. You can play as Bob. And he's a big boy. He's a big boy. He's slower than Tennessee Kid. He's slower than Sly. He's slower than Ryoichi. Bob's major gimmick, his uniqueness that makes him unique enough all the other Cooper ancestors and Sly, is that he can climb. If you've played Uncharted, if you've played God of War, you remember these platforming climbing segments. Where you jump on a wall, and you're climbing up the wall, jumping from thing to thing. That's basically what Bob does. So when you get a mission with Bob, you normally have a climbing segment. It's kind of like what you did in God of War. Not the PS4 God of War. Don't get confused. There was a whole series of games prior to the PS4 God of War. There's a whole series of them. They're a lot better, and they're awesome. That God of War with the climbing segment. That's the one I'm talking about. But that's basically what Bob does. And that's fine. And Sly's costume that he gets in Chapter 3 is a fur of an old leopard. A saber-tooth, really. It's a skin, an animal skin. Basically a floor rug. And he uses that as a disguise. You can lay down on the floor, go prone. And enemies will not see you, they'll walk by. And then there's a pounce ability. You can use the pounce ability when he goes prone. If there's an enemy nearby, even if he's far away, you can use prone to pounce, fly all the way across a gap, and you can take out the enemy. And there's also these little balloon animals stationed in various places, especially retroactively. Like in Chapter 2, there's a little blow-up animal way up on a cliff that you would have to go back in time to after you complete Chapter 3. And you have to equip the leopard skin, and you can use the pounce to grab onto the animal balloon thing up on the cliff to jump up there to collect a treasure or two. And that's the entire gimmick behind that outfit, is the pounce ability to jump large distances to attack enemies or to grab onto balloons or whatever, balloon animals, to collect treasures in previous chapters. In Chapter 4, your Cooper ancestor is Galeth. Sir Galeth. Sir Galeth is awesome. He's basically a knight, a chivalrous knight. And his unique ability, if you remember the little hooks that you can grab onto, and then hold down the, L, the left analog stick, you hold the left analog stick down, then you press X to jump up high distances. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Well, Galeth can do it a lot better than any of the other Cooper ancestors, because he's got a sword with him, as well as his cane. So basically, when he jumps up, he has a sword pointed upward, and he can break little walls or whatever. So when you grab onto the little hook below, You got a little wall up here, or floor, or whatever, blockage. You press X, he's got the sword, breaks through the blockage to jump up higher than any of the other Cooper ancestors. That's Gallant's gimmick, and his personality is lovely. His personality is amazing. He's a gung-ho, chivalrous knight archetype, and it's just amazing. It's amazing. The disguise that you get in Chapter 4 is the Ranger disguise. I believe they ran out of time for all the Cooper ancestors. I believe there was a Robin Hood Sly Cooper ancestor, but they ran out of time or whatever. So they just gave it to Sly as an outfit. So the Robin Hood Archer outfit for Sly, it's basically a reskin. You could change Sly's outfit to the Robin Hood outfit. He could jump around, he could smack people. His moveset remains the same, unchanged. But you can now jump up to these little buckets of arrows. Some buckets have rope, some buckets don't. The buckets that don't have rope, you could jump up to, press circle, and fire arrows at enemies, and it's pretty cool. But the ones you want to look out for are buckets with rope and arrows, because you could fire an arrow attached to a string of rope and create new tight ropes to jump onto to access faraway areas to collect treasures. And yes, there are buckets of arrows in previous chapters that you have to go to retroactively to grab the treasures to complete the level. And it's pretty cool. I liked it. I love the way that they incorporated it into the story too. They had a really fun platforming level in Chapter 4 involving the Robin Hood outfit. It was really cool. In Chapter 5, you meet Al Kupar Cooper. Something like Ali Kupar Cooper. You're in a Persian country, an unnamed Persian country. And you play as the Cooper ancestor here, who's basically based off a genie and stuff like that. This Cooper ancestor made deals with genies to get new abilities. He has a magic carpet that works as Sly's paraglider. So unlike any of the previous 4 Coopers, this Cooper ancestor, I'm just going to call him Allie. Allie Cooper can use the magic carpet to get around. It works just like the paraglider, so it's not like an infinite flying carpet, it's just a hovering carpet. But what Allie Cooper can do, that's his unique ability, is he can rapidly climb poles. He rapidly vaults poles. So let's say you have a large, giant-ass pole. It's just a large pole. When you go with any of the Cooper ancestors with Sly, you just climb up. Climb. With Allie, it's just... It just slides up that pole really fast. And on this level, Chapter 5 level, there are a bunch of snake pit poles. Basically, there's a snake that flies up the pole really fast, so Sly can't climb up it without a snake grabbing at him and taking him down. Well, Allie can just zoom up there before the snake can climb out of its little basket to grab you on this pole. So that's basically what Allie does. He's used for that. He's pretty fun. He's got a very fun character, personality about him. He's lazy, is all get out. And he would be excellent as an out-of-character type, an audience commentator. Because he comments a lot during gameplay. So let's say you go through a platforming segment, Allie would go like, "Oh good, more climbing. If I climb anymore, I'll turn into monkey." So he just makes these little quips. I love that about it. I love that about that character. The costume that you can unlock in Chapter 5 is Allie Cooper's old thief costume. It's enchanted with the ability to slow time, basically rendering Allie Cooper obsolete. Sly can slow time, and he can climb up those same snake poles without the snake grabbing at him, because he could slow time and climb up them really fast. Technically, it's in real time. He's still climbing slowly, but he's stopped time. So he's actually going up to everybody else's perception. And he also obtains a sword for his triangle charge attack. So when you stop time, you can run up to an enemy, charge the sword attack, and you could swing it and take down most enemies in one hit. Except for the big guys. The big guys take a few hits still. But those are your costumes. and each one has a different gimmick about it in each chapter that I really liked. And in the final chapter, for the final boss, I think a lot of people got disappointed with it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. The final boss has Bentley go back in time to bring all 5 Cooper ancestors together to have each one go through a series of platforming, utilizing their unique skills to rescue the present-day Sly. Because, during the game, you had Sly rescue them the first time from La Paradox's henchmen. Well, this time, all 5 of them have come together to the present to rescue their buddy. So I liked that. You go through the platforming segments using all 5 of the Cooper ancestors, and then you have the final boss, which is basically a quick time event. I am okay with that. I am completely okay with that. I am. The bosses in Sly 4 are probably my favorite throughout this franchise. Probably because I sucked in 2 and 3. I will fully admit that I sucked in 2 and 3. But at least in 4, it takes on a classic type of Crash gameplay. If you remember Crash 1, 2, 3, and particularly 3, the bosses have a little gimmick. They do a little series of attacks, and then they're vulnerable, and you can attack them. Then they do another series of attacks, followed by a new ability in the second time. Then they become vulnerable, and then you bonk them. That's basically how the boss fights in Sly 4 were set up. In Sly 3, there was a lot of boss fights that I really had a lot of trouble with, like the bamboo level. The bamboo level where you're jumping across the bamboo sticks to attack, I sucked at that. And then there was the Kraken level, where there was just way too much going on. There was fireballs, there was flamethrowers, there were tentacles, there's so much going on at once. And it was a real-time battle. You were smacking the tentacles to deal damage. There's just too much going on. The bosses were very simplified in Sly 4, and the checkpoints were very forgiving. So each boss has a series of 3 cycles. They do their little attack, you attack them, and they go into the second cycle, and they have a new ability or 2. Then they go through their thing, you avoid their attacks, and then they become vulnerable again, and then you attack them. And then they do it for the 3rd time, and then you win. So there's 3 stages to every boss fight, and you get 3 checkpoint saves. 1 after each one. So 1 at the start of the boss fight, so if you die, during that first wave, you reload immediately at the start of the boss fight. And if you beat that first tier, the 3 stages, if you beat that first stage, your checkpoint loads you in the start of the second one. So you don't have to worry about ever needing to do this one ever again. You've done it, and then it's gone. Now you just gotta do this one. And when you do that one, then if you die in the 3rd part too, you reload in. And the best part is your health comes back. So let's say you go through stage 1, and the enemy takes off half of your health, and then this guy takes out the other half. You reload at the start of the second stage with a full bar of health, utilizing that to take this guy down. He might take down half your health on this second stage, and then you go into this stage at half health, and this guy takes you down. Then you reload back in with a full bar of health, and then you win. I loved that. Call me a filthy casual, but I think that the other game should have had that type of checkpoint system installed. I think that they should have had that. They didn't have nearly enough of those, in my opinion. But Sly 4 is something that you can easily just pop in and get to 100% and grab the platinum. There's nothing that's overtly too difficult. There's nothing extremely difficult, impossible to do. All of the bosses are easily beatable. A filthy casual like me could do it. All of the bosses are beatable. All of the treasures are easily grabbed. You can utilize all of the Cooper ancestors to grab whatever the stuff you could need to do, because sometimes in stage 2 there might be a crack shot door that only Tennessee Kid Cooper can break down to grab a treasure over there. Each thing, and there's just a little thing, but they're all doable. You can complete this game, and that's great. I've been going on for 40 minutes about this game, and I doubt anybody's going to listen to it for this long. But that was my discussion of Sly 4 Thieves in Time. You're looking at the Sly trilogy here because I don't have a hard copy. but you knew that since the start of this video. I'm just putting this out so you have something to look at. I've been MR Cole, and remember, be imaginative.